So now that we have our crosshair and our gun in place following our camera view, why don't we just add the most basic functionality to our gun, which is firing a single bullet prefab. Just get our gun firing. That's what we're going to do in this video. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is I'm going to go ahead and just make a bullet. So I'm not going to do anything too fancy. I'm just going to grab a sphere, and I already know some of these values, so like so. And these values give me kind of the size I want for my bullet to come out of my gun, like so. All right. So now that I've got my gun sized up, I just did a vertex snap to get that gun at the barrel. I'm going to reset its position to the 0 axis, and I'm going to do a little bit of cleaning up in my my asset list here. I want to create folders for all of my environment type assets. So let's say environment mats, because I have a feeling that's going to get in the way of while I'm coding. All right, so I'm going to leave shotguns and the turrets out, just making stuff for my environment. And more than likely, I'll already have this stuff organized for you in the asset list. So I'm going to go ahead and pause this. All right, I got my hierarchy organized a little bit more. I have environment folders for all my environment assets, so we're not getting in the way of all that stuff. All right, so now that I got my bullet made, I'm just going to go ahead and give it a simple little shader real quick, and just so I can see it easier. I'm going to call this bullet mat, and I'm going to drag and drop it right on my bullet. And for testing purposes, I'm going to make it bright red right now so I can see it more easily. This will change. All right. Well, now that I have my bullet made, I need to give it a name. So let's go to my hierarchy and call it bullet. All right. Now I need to give it a. I'm going to turn the collider off of it for right now. I don't know if I'll need a trigger for this bullet or not. So I'm going to deactivate my collider just so I don't have my bullets bouncing off of things when I shoot them. Now we're going to make a quick little mover script. Nothing too crazy. We're just going to call it mover. And this script's going to control basically things that we want to move in a forward direction. We've seen it before. So after I make my script, I'm going to open it up in MonoDevelop. All right, let's bring this over. Tidy up my scene here. I won't need void start. And I know what update does. Thank you very much. Let's make some public floats. Call it bullet speed. I'm going to go ahead and set it at an initial value. You can change this later in the inspector to whatever you want. Bullet lifetime. Just set something generic like so. All right, and in void update, we're going to do a transform dot translate vector 3 dot forward times our bullet speed times our time dot delta time. Excuse me. And I think actually we'll need a void awake so we can do a destroy after my bullet's lifetime. All right, so that should be all we need for our bullet mover script. There we go. Syntax error is already popping up. All right, so must have done bullet lifetime. I don't think that's the error in the first place. Let me check that out. Yes, apparently you must say game object to tell it. Yeah, destroy the thing we're attached to, I guess. All right, there we go. So why don't we just do a little test real quick? Actually, do I have the mover script attached? I do not. Let's move my mover script. And let's press play. Oh, maybe, yeah, let's undo maximize so you can see what's happening in the scene view. That bullet was a little small. So I press play. And you can see my bullet take off. I'll highlight it this time. And then after 4 seconds, it should destroy. There we go. All right, perfect bullet prefab. So what we're going to do is we're going to make this bullet a prefab now. I'm going to bring it down here. After I drag it out of my prefabs folder, I'm just going to give it the prefab little name right there. So now I have a good bullet prefab. So let's get into our shooting script, and we're going to be living in this for a little bit. So I'm just going to make a script called shoot, and we're going to attach it to my first-person controller. First-person controller has all these components that already come with a standard asset, such as your movement and everything. What we're going to do is we're going to add a shoot script on top of that controls the fire of our gun. And from here on out, it's probably going to be a basic review of how we can set up a intelligent fire rate and burst interval stuff. All this stuff we've covered in our space shooter game previously. So I'm going to move sort of fast through it and explain it lightly because it is kind of a review. Just enough explanation to give you guys a refresher. All right, tidy the stuff up. All right, we're going to start out with our variables. We're going to say public float, and then we're going to give how many shots we want to fire in our burst interval. So we'll do burst number of shots, public float. Next, we're going to say how fast our burst fire intervals are. So how fast in between, how fast our bullets fly out of our gun. So if it's a three shot burst, this interval will say how closely together these bullets are fired in that burst. And then not public float, and we're just going to do a simple fire rate. Next, we're going to have a few things here. We're going to make some public game objects, and of course we'll need something to hold our bullet, and we're going to need something to tell us where we're shooting our bullets from shot spawn. We haven't made that yet. And in fact, after we make this little variable, let's go in and see our handiwork. We have all these new variables over here. What we need to do now is we need to make an empty game object and get it to set right at the barrel of my gun here. And this will be our shot spawn. And we're just going to call it shot spawn. And why don't we just hold down the V key and snap to the end of our gun to get started. And then I'm going to go into 2D mode. Well, maybe not. I guess I'll use these little arrows right here so I can zoom in and get a better view of what's going on. And it's a loose position, nothing too scientific here. Notice how I'm using my view cube to kind of inset it in the barrel of the gun, like so. So now all of our bullets will come out the front of our gun. There we go. Let me just set it right there in the center. All right. And then we're going to take that shot spawn empty game object, and I'm going to just drop it right underneath my machine gun prefab. It seems like a good place for it to hide. All right, so now we're going to assign these public game objects. So we're going to say, let's go to my prefabs and let's drag and drop my bullet prefab from my prefabs folder into my bullet game object. And then shot spawn will drag into my shot spawn right there. So now we know what we want to. Now we know what we want to instantiate and where we want to instantiate it when we fire our gun. All right, so let's get into more code here. I'm going to make some mental notes here because I'm going to need to get at the stats of my character for ammo counts. So I'm going to make a note here that get component of player stats for a local variable. All right, and void update. If we hold down our left mouse button, we're going to use key code in this instance. Mouse 0. Mouse 0 is left click, and then let's make our brackets. So we have our first if statement. So what we know is we're going to use coroutines and a timer to create our burst interval and fire rate type stuff. And I forgot to add a private float variable for my timer. There we go. That's going to help us dictate how we're going to do our burst interval setup. And we're just going to do a start coroutine, and we're going to have a fire. Be careful with the autocorrect because we haven't made our coroutine function yet. It's not really saying, hey, that can't be. So why don't we go ahead and make our coroutine right here. Coroutines allow us to add pauses and wait for seconds in between certain actions. So that's why I really like code routines. And this is where the meat and potatoes of our shoot's going to come from. So if time.time is less than timer, and I'm going to make another little note here for my ammo count. So I'm going to do a slash asterisk enough ammo question mark. So when I come back in and have my stat script already made, I'll know I'll have to update that. I'm going to go ahead and add the ampersands right there. That's a nice little way to remind yourself to come back and do stuff. Just this little package right there that holds comments like so. All right, so let's get in and do it. So timer equals, what is timer going to equal? Well, it's going to equal time.time, not that, time.time plus our fire rate. All right, there's our timer setup. And I equals 0. This is going to be our for loop that shoots our burst fire. And then we're going to count up on our burst number of shots. And then I plus plus to increase our counter every time we go through our loop. So when we run our, oh, there's a problem right there. I had fire written out wrong. All right, so let me just make some indentions there. All right, so this timer, every time we go in and press our mouse button, our timer is going to start counting down, and it's going to say, okay, time.time, fire rate. What's our fire rate doing? Well, it's basically our, it's the interval between when we want to shoot our bullets. So we're adding that little bit of time, our fire rate time, to our timer, so we can add more of a pause in between burst intervals, or just how fast the gun fires in general. All right, so then we're going to do an instantiate inside of our for loop. We're going to instantiate our bullet. Where are we going to do it? Shot spawn dot transform dot position, and then shot spawn. This has been finicky with and then rotation. That'll be important, that rotation, because we are going to add a little bit of some randomness whenever we fire a bullet, kind of like how we had our spray fire with our spaceship. And I want to make an ammo decrease, or make a little comment saying decrease ammo. And then I'm going to do my yield return new, wait for seconds, and this is where I put my burst interval time. So before we go back around into our for loop, we're going to wait for our burst interval time. So basically the time between each bullet fires within our burst. All right, so if all goes according to plan, this should now shoot our bullets. All right, let's test it out. But before we do that, I think we need to give some values for our burst number of shots. So let's do a 3-round burst with a quick little interval in our fire rate. We're going to fire every half second. All right, why don't we do a 0.1 burst interval? There we go. It takes a strong man to be able to outrun his bullets. All right, guys. So that's basic firing functionality for our gun. But you'll notice something glaringly wrong at the beginning here. I'm not hitting my crosshair at all. I'm firing from the hip, basically, and it's making my accuracy just terrible, right? All right, so what we're going to do is, in the next lesson, we're going to learn how we can hold down our right mouse button and aim down our iron sights, so we have a better estimate of how we're going to be looking down our scope and how we're going to hit more of our, targeted cursor area. Because right now, this hip fire is not really doing a good job. All right, so that does it for this video. And the next one, like I said, we'll be doing that ADS, the aim mechanic. All right, thanks.